Welcome back. You're watching Channel 1 Liverpool with me, Rifat Malik. Channel 1 Tubruk. Channel 1 Albert Dock. Time to take a look at the headlines now.
It's 10 to 11, I'm Rifat Malik. 9 o'clock, I'm Rifat Malik.
Christopher Older was found dead. All political campaigning has stopped. Stand head to head with...
Hello and welcome to the Muslim Viewpoint, a new podcast series powered by American Muslim Today, the non-profit national media platform. I'm your host, Rifat Malik, and today we are continuing our Get Out the Vote series. Joining us is Texas House Representative for District 102, Ana-Maria Ramos. She is running for re-election and has just become the first Democrat to announce her campaign for House Speaker against 5 other Republican candidates. Representative Ramos, as the only Democrat to be running for Speaker of the Texas House with your challenge to the incumbent Republican Representative Dade Phelan, why have you decided to make this move now?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me join you all today. I decided to make this move. There are multiple reasons for that, but the reality is of all the people who are running, and even Speaker Phelan, there's not really somebody who's representing the voice of the people of Texas. And so on the heels of the DNC and the excitement of our convention, there was one night in particular that Michelle Obama, raised a call to action to everybody and said, don't sit and complain, do something. With the spirit of that message and talking to grassroots activists across Texas, the concern is that there was a question of why isn't any Democrat running? Why isn't any Democrat challenging all of these? At that point, there was like 5 or 6 people running for Speaker of the House. Why aren't we challenging this? And so I answered that call to action and said, you know what, I'm not going to sit and complain about why no Democrat is running. And so I decided with the collective force of the people of Texas that I was going to decide to run for Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think sets you apart from the opponents? As you say, I think they're mostly Republicans who are standing in what is, of course, a Republican-controlled state House. What impact would your appointment make?
Well, once again, the voice of the people of Texas. Look at who is running and who actually are the people of Texas. Look at all of the people who have decided that they can speak for the 30 million of Texas, that they're more than qualified to speak for the 30 million people of Texas. But I can tell you, their perspectives do not reflect the people of Texas. And so what sets me apart, that's just one of the many, many things that set me apart. But additionally, and one of our main reasons for launching this campaign is not only to be the voice of the people of Texas, but to fight for our public schools that also represent the beautiful population of the state of Texas. And these individuals, every single one of them, do not support our public schools. In fact, they support vouchers and this extreme Project 2025 right-wing agenda in Texas. They've all voted for those extreme bills that really have made the lives of Texas working families even much more difficult. And so it is unfortunate that people think that this foregone conclusion that these individuals are the only ones that can possibly win the race for Speaker of House. And our challenge to the people of Texas is you get to decide. They don't decide for you. You get to decide who you are going to elect to represent your voice for Speaker of the House in the Texas legislature coming in January.
You mentioned the DNC, the convention. As a female Democrat, I wanted to ask you, what has the Kamala Harris presidential nomination meant for you?
Oh, wow. It's very touching. It's very inspiring, more than anything inspiring, because in our race, when I started running in 2018, just seeing the young girls in our community, just across Texas, right? But in America, just the excitement that we could have the first woman president of this country. And really when women are sitting at the table, there is a complete different perspective, a complete different light on the decisions that are being made to affect families across this country. And so it has just meant the world to me to know that this is the time that we're going to make history at the federal level and really let these little girls across America, when they're reading the books and thinking all of the pictures of the president and then Kamala Harris and all the pictures of all the men that we have, it's exciting. And I just can't wait to see what young little girl is looking at this, listening to the story, part of this fight. I even get letters in my office about young little Democrat girls who are 8 years old who are, in the fight. And so it's just so exciting and inspiring.
Harris and your party have come under very heavy criticism, as you know, from many of your constituents and millions of Americans across the country for the Israeli policy in Gaza. I'm sure you're aware American bombs have been used in the killing of almost 40,000, mainly women and children, Palestinians. Many of your constituents feel that America is complicit in what they deem a genocide. What's your view on that position?
I don't disagree with the people at all. In fact, this is one place. I mean, as a Democrat, we are a big umbrella party, and I don't agree at all with what America has done in our involvement in this genocide. I do agree with the people. I do agree with the protests. I do agree that America should not be funding this genocide. And well, I wish that we at the federal level really stopped funding this extreme Netanyahu. In fact, we were the first representatives to actually issue the request for a ceasefire. There was only a few representatives in the Texas legislature, and this was in the very beginning when the attacks on the family started in Palestine, and we got a lot of flack for it. But that's the right thing to do. We can't let this federal government fund genocide.
On a related topic, as you know, your district is close to the University of Texas at Dallas, where students were arrested in April during a peaceful pro-Gaza protest. Governor Greg Abbott and the university administration deployed state troopers to violently tear down an encampment, leading to the arrest of 21 students, professors, and alumni. Was this a violation of their First Amendment rights, in your view?
100%. It's 100% a violation of their First Amendment rights. They had every right to protest. And I'll be honest with you, the bill that was passed that allowed these protesters, I voted against it. And let me explain to you why. It's not a bill that disallowed the protesters. It was a bill that was written and passed in the legislature after what happened in South Carolina. It was about right-wing extremists going to university campuses and disrupting the students' First Amendment rights. And I knew when they tried to pass that bill that they were opening the door for right-wing extremists, but they never thought that the brown community would use the same right to bring in people from the community. And so this bill is a bit nuanced. But at the end of the day, these students and community members who came and protested at the UTD campus were well within their rights. According to this law, the law used to limit just student protesters, people who were part of that university, to protest on campus. They passed a law letting the community come in, but they never thought it would be brown communities coming in. They passed a law allowing right-wing extremists to come in on campuses. But now when they saw that it was brown communities, it was immigrant communities, now they want to tamp down and militarize this and weaponize these the free speech, the right to free speech. So I 100% believe that these students had the right, and I think the courts are going to prove that as well.
Okay. On the issue of free speech and a related issue, UTD's student newspaper, The Mercury, say they've been targeted by the administration, who've accused them of student activism and biased reporting in their coverage of the pro-Gaza protests. And this includes escalating editorial interference, culminating in the firing of its editor. And our publication has actually been in contact with the students. We've seen some of the evidence for these allegations. Are you concerned that there has been this kind of infringement on their editorial independence?
100%, absolutely concerned. We met with the president and a couple of department heads at the university a couple of weeks ago. It was a very spirited conversation, and it's unfortunate the decisions that they have made, and we have encouraged over and over again and are looking at different strategies to really attack this issue. But the leadership of the university, I know the president is stepping down, but the leadership of the university has made a wrong call, and we expressed that to them in no uncertain terms. This call is wrong. They're on the wrong side of history, and they are on the wrong side of history in addition to not only the violating the rights to free speech, but where we are in the greater geopolitics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
On the issue of the Mercury student journalists who say they are being targeted for their coverage of the pro-Gaza peaceful protests, they say they're being targeted by the university. Is this editorial interference, a concerning matter, do you believe?
It really is. It's part of the authoritarian regime that I think Abbott is trying to push forward. And he sent a message to these universities. They know they will be punished. There will be consequences if they don't follow this authoritarian regime that Abbott is pushing forward. Listen, I was a student journalist in my community college newspaper at Eastfield here in Dallas County. I don't ever remember the administration stepping into anything that we had to say.
Absolutely.
We were taught that journalism, that was the voice of the people, that we needed to investigate issues and bring it forth and let people make their own minds, aka critical thinking.
Absolutely.
That is what empowers people. When they are trying to shut it down, not only the government, but now presidents of universities and punishing our students, I think, once again, these are dark times in history and we need to fight back. And kudos to these students for fighting back. But this shows all the more reason we need them. We need their voices. We need to strengthen their profession and strengthen the right to free speech.
Moving on to the issue of immigration, once again, it's become a hot button topic this election cycle. What is your view of the false claims that Team Trump have been making about Haitian migrants in Springfield?
I think it's just absolutely disgusting because you're talking about working families. You're talking about people who, have followed the process that is set out before them to seek asylum, to live in communities, to pay taxes, to purchase consumer goods. Not only is it affecting the Haitian community, but now it's affecting everybody in the community when the schools are being closed, when people can't go to work, when they have to stay at home and take care of their children because of all these threats to little ones who should be protected and insulated from this extreme political agenda that Trump and his party have imposed on our community.
Immigration is always an issue here at home. That's because of, obviously, we're on the Mexico border. Is there a immigration crisis in your view?
No, actually, I visited the border a couple of months ago, and we know statistically when you look at the border numbers, and we were told this by the Border Patrol and by our Lone Star officials as well, immigration has gone down. We know that to be facts, but what has not gotten down or has not been reduced or decreased is the greed and the showmanship of Governor Abbott. And so, no, absolutely not. There is what needs to happen. What we do need a solution for is where Texas is working with the federal government. We do need to pass sensible legislation. There is not a lot of pathways right now, as we know, if you get into the details of it. We need to expand and we need to make sure that we reform the immigration process, but that is at the federal level, and it's not something that Texas can address. And I think the Constitution has been clear about that.
You mentioned the showmanship of Governor Greg Abbott. Do you include the busing of hundreds and thousands of migrants, spending hundreds of millions of dollars? Do you include that in part of his sort of showmanship?
Absolutely. If you listen to Governor Abbott, he's not going to give you the facts and the data. What he is going to give you is messaging from his big donors. Texas is the capital for the country, right, of prison privatization. That's what these big corporations need. They need a problem so that they can provide a solution for it, aka tax money, tax dollars being diverted to them. So all of this goes back to how are we going to create a problem so we can divert money to these big donors that are going to set up these private prisons, set up these bus charter companies, set up all of these businesses that we need to use to continue to elevate this quote unquote problem, or what they call a crisis. So when you look at all of this issue, it goes back to the bottom dollar. Abbott's really avarice.
On another topic, gun control is, of course, a major concern for Americans after yet another school shooting, this time in Georgia. VP nominee J.D. Vance is proposing to arm and militarize our public schools. How can we keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of potential shooters, especially here in Texas, where we, of course, have permitless carry?
We need to pass laws that are going to protect Texans and protect our children. And it doesn't have to be this way. It's not always been this way. When I was a child in school, there wasn't a mass shooting every week. Once again, Texas is the mass shooting capital of America. This does not have to be this way. We need to pass strong laws. We need to protect our students. And in fact, in the Texas legislature, we had some options that were bipartisan, that the reality is the Speaker of the House at that time did not allow to get through, and that the Republicans blocked that bill. And so there are options out there. There are alternatives that, once again, this Republican-controlled legislature stopped. It stopped literally the protection of children in our schools. And it does not have to be that way. And we get to decide on November the 5th if we want to make a change there or if we're going to keep with the status quo.
Another very important election issue concerns reproductive rights. Texas is the most uninsured state in the nation and has the greatest number of mothers dying from childbirth. Within that context, how have or will the recent abortion laws impact women's health?
Once again, it's extreme, the suffering that women are going through because of this horrible legislation. I tell you, day in and day out, when we're at the Capitol and we're fighting against this horrible legislation, but at the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers. We are outnumbered by these Republicans. We need to replace them about 15 new representatives from the Democratic Party so that we can reverse some of this extreme agenda that they've passed. We are ground zero for Project 2025. It is not an idea that the Republicans just thought of 2 years ago. This has been happening in Texas. They've been chipping away and introducing this Project 2025 legislation in Texas. We already have some of those extreme policies, like the reversal of women's rights here in Texas. I mean, the fact that a rapist's family can sue a woman for seeking the termination of a pregnancy, that is, you would think that's out of this world, but it's not. It's in our state. Doctors are scared to treat women who may die on their hospital beds because they don't want any challenges from the state concerning a women's rights. There is no question about it. We're in a very, very dark place in Texas. And if we don't make a change on November the 5th, it's scary where we can go, but what is hopeful is that we can reverse this trajectory, and we can start doing it now.
And just a final question. I know public education is very important to you. Texas ranks among the bottom in all the states regarding education. Governor Abbott is still trying to defund public education through school vouchers, which allow parents to choose the public or private school their child attends. Is this a solution to our education crisis?
We need to understand where vouchers was introduced. Vouchers was introduced in Texas, or the introduction of the idea of vouchers was introduced in around 1955 after Brown versus Board of Education. It is state-sponsored, state-sanctioned segregation. In that bill, when they tried to introduce it in 1955, that bill specifically said no Negro child should be allowed to go to school with a white child. No white child should be forced to go to school with a Negro child. That is why they introduced vouchers. They did not want the mixing of races in our public schools. They wanted to divert our tax dollars exclusively to these white children. And what we're seeing now, what vouchers would do, is divert this money to children, families with more means. So it is only those individuals, the majority statistics show that it is those families who send their children to private schools that already send their children to private schools. They will be the ones utilizing these vouchers, not our regular working class families. So what do the vouchers mean to our regular working class families? They will take this money from our schools in our communities, like mine, that just shut down 5 schools this past school year. Our communities are going to have neighborhoods across the state where their public schools are going to be shutting down. And we are going to have to drive our children across town, whether there's public transportation or not. And that is what vouchers will be doing to our families. They will be hurting our families. They will be putting more strain on Texas families, not to mention they are going to disinvest and really destroy the future of Texas. We cannot allow vouchers to pass in Texas.
Ana-Maria Ramos, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.